You're watching Morning at NTV.
Yes, this is Morning at NTV, and you're with me, Malaki Vilodera and Romeo Busiku. Let's continue with our conversations on hashtag Morning at NTV. Now we're getting into our last conversation for the day, of course, within the show. And 3 weeks back, thereabout, we started on a conversation on inclusive education. Now, courtesy of the Ministry of Education, they're drafting a policy to ensure that there's education for all and that every Ugandan child does access quality education, regardless of their political, social, economic or physical standing, whatever challenges there is. And so on the first day, we set the foundation for you to get to understand what are they trying to push? What's the basis of this draft policy? Second week, we also looked at something that was quite critical, and that was the missing links. What is it that we have that is not sufficient that we indeed need the policy to, pretty much sort out? And so today, before we wrap up that conversation, we're looking at, great, we have approved it, you, the viewer, has understood it, but moving forward, if it gets to the parliamentary stage and parliamentarians do approve of this policy, what will you be left with? Implementation. So today we'll be breaking down the implementation challenges that they foresee and what it is that they're doing to plan to break through the implementation challenges to ensure that each Ugandan child is indeed accessing quality and inclusive education. And so in studios to have that conversation yet again, I'm being joined by Mr. Onen Negris. He is the Commissioner Special Needs Education from the Ministry of Education and Sports. Many thanks, sir, and welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next to him is Ms. Sarah Ayesiga. She is the Acting Assistant Commissioner for Inclusive Education and Non-Formal Education as well, coming from the Ministry of Education and Sports. Many thanks and welcome back again to Morning at NTV.
Thank you, Mala, and good morning, viewers.
Good morning. Now, we have looked through this. It's a conversation that has stretched through the 3 weeks. And by the way, this morning, we are also going to make sure that that inclusivity is practical. So you're going to be seeing us having this conversation down there with someone special with us, and that's the sign language interpreter, Mr. John Buyinza. He'll be making sure that we are all having some inclusive conversation this morning. So we've broken that down. We understood what the policy is all about, the foundation, why we need it. We've also broken down the missing links, what we have right now and what this policy will address. But post that, I think Ugandans now are pro this, because we've all been disgruntled saying that if we have a child who's specially gifted, we always call them that, they're not well included. And now we're pushing for them to be, to go through the normal education policy, to go to normal schools, where everyone is going through. There are many other facets that we looked at. But post that, if this is approved, what's the critical, the elephant in the room in terms of challenges, implementation challenges that you're foreseeing? Miss Sarah.
Thank you, Mala, and our viewers. Thank you very much for being there to actually understand what we are really trying to push forward. For inclusive education to work, there must be a restructuring of the cultures, restructuring of the policies, restructuring of the practices. So that's where the challenges start. Restructuring cultures. There are very many cultures that actually have been barring, have been stopping learners, have been stopping children with special needs to progress, to sail through.
Correct.
Therefore, we are going to start with that, and the policies that are on ground that actually are not favoring. For example, if we bring forward the science policy, which says it is compulsory, you will find that some of these learners, some of these are in places where we don't have even the laboratories, the apparatuses. So you will find that some of those policies, we needed to go through them again, to have review of those policies, to see to it that they favor. Every child has an opportunity to really get on whatever education system is providing.
Right.
And if they can't, therefore, what are we going to put forward as an alternative?
Right.
So the practices, the cultures have to be actually looked into, and that is what we foresee as challenges. Some people, change is always coming with some of, you know, change is always difficult. Some people tend to be rigid on what they are used to.
But Ms. Ayasige, how do you plan on sorting out that challenge? Because they always say, before I go to Mr. Negris, they always say that, you know what, changing mindsets is hard. Because this is a person who has been born into a community that believes in a certain way, grown up with these particular values and cultural norms, and now we're saying we want to divert their beliefs into something else to support this policy and the implementation of it thereof. So in terms of, you've foreseen that being a challenge, but how do you plan on breaking through that challenge?
Of course, sensitization is one of the key strategy that we are going to start with. And of course, sensitization goes with a make-believe when people see it happening. You get me?
Yes.
Allowing these children to come on board, and then we do everything possible that we are supposed to do. And once people see that these children have a potential, especially those with disabilities, have a potential and they can achieve once we allow them to, we give them the opportunity to participate. Therefore, we need to really look into the cultures and bring forward as many actors as possible, have a coordinated way of how we are going to implement, how we're going to bring everyone on board. The parents have to come on board. We need to make sure that it starts right away from the parent. Can you bring out that child?
All right.
And then can we see, you know, if a parent hides this child, therefore we are not going to have an opportunity. So we are going to really make sure, enter into the parents, try to make sure that they bring out the children.
Okay.
Look, as I've said, look at the policies, try to look into the policies as a sector. Can we see if all these policies we have on ground, are they really inclusive enough? Are they bringing people on board?
All right. Okay. Mr. Negris, I was looking at the statistics of South Africa, and they really tried to push this inclusive education policy. But implementation still is a challenge for them, because they started at a rate of, now that you're, you know, in that particular docket of special needs children, for them, when they started off, they had 70% of special needs children not accessing education, quality education. Well, they put in the policy, and a few years down the line, now we're talking of 50%, but they're still grappling with implementation challenges. The policy is amazing, but implementation on ground is still a challenge. Now that you're in that particular docket, how do you plan on breaking those barriers, and what will it be for you? What are you looking at the necessary responses coming from the different, you know, shareholders and stakeholders, government being at the forefront of that, in terms of breaking through this great challenge of implementing the policy?
I think that's a good question, but I must say every action you want to take normally goes with some challenges. The South African situation that you are talking about, it was good enough. I personally went on a benchmarking visit to South Africa, and we saw what it is. But I think it's a matter of time. If they started earlier than us, they must be ahead of us now. But I think there is an opportunity to catch up. So the challenges are, of course, very many. Good enough, we foresaw this when we started on this journey. We know resources are there, but I know any activity undertaken requires resources, and the resources are never enough. But we have, through this time, gone through a lot of changes in the education of learners with special needs and in the implementation of special needs. I remember a time when I first joined the Ministry of Education to serve the children with special needs, including those with disabilities. Up to today, I see a very, very big positive change. Our challenges have always been actually very many. I've mentioned the resources one, but I'm saying that is minor. If we combine the resources with what he was talking about, trying to remove the negative cultures, which I think we have gone into already, we are doing that. Not only us as a Ministry of Education, but we are using our partners, people in disability movement. Together, we are going to the communities and talking to them And as you can see, the number of learners now with disabilities and other special needs education has increased over time. So changing the attitude is a slow thing, and we are doing that. Of course, we have challenges of teachers. Teachers we have in this country who are trained in identifying these children's needs are still very limited, very inadequate.
Correct.
And we have gone into that. We have taken a move into trying to ensure that our primary teachers training colleges have in their curriculum, we are planning this, have in their curriculum special needs education as a standalone subject and examinable. We are already engaging Kiambogo University, for instance, that this is done. I think the process is going to be started, if it is not yet started, so that all the teachers of this country, at least to begin with at the primary level, they come up with the knowledge of what these children are, what difficulty does this child have when he joins education.
Right, right.
And we feel that if this is done, the teachers that we are going to have, instead of going for a special course that may come later, but all of them coming out of the teacher training colleges will have an idea of.
So making sure that that facet is inculcated in their curriculum.
That's right.
So let me ask you a question. What then happens to a majority of schools whereby we already have teachers who've been deployed there? So what will you do to ensure that these teachers are well prepared to be able to handle every student inclusively, and also in terms of making sure that they have a support structure? Because it's okay, you can say that we're changing the curriculum, perfect, so meaning them that are going to be churned out will be good enough to handle these issues. But them that are there will need what? Preparation, one. The other thing is support in the long run, so we can make sure that we are maintaining that ideal standard. So in terms of that, what are you looking at? Is finances a critical issue, or is it support again from the stakeholders, Ms. Ayesiga?
You know, yes, it is one thing that a teacher has gone through the training, and it's another thing he's able to implement or to deliver whatever he has been given at the training level at the institutions that are training them. What we intend to do, we are supposed to work with our education partners. A teacher comes out with the knowledge on how to support learners with, to support all learners, because inclusive education is for everybody, and many children are excluded at different levels. When he comes out, we are supposed to work coordinatively with all the partners to ensure that we follow up this teacher, we follow up to make sure. Then planning, it comes also in planning. How are we going to plan to enable this teacher to deliver what he has been trained in? Resources, like we were talking about, even the materials, because a teacher may come and doesn't find the materials. If I'm blind, and then a teacher may be well knowledgeable in what? In the braille, to using braille, but if the braille machine is not there, then the teacher is going to be incapacitated. They might do everything possible. So how are we going to plan? So right from the planning level, and for all the ministries, because all ministries are responsible for this inclusiveness. How much are we putting in? How, if we sit down and try to come up with a unit cost for looking after this child who has this need, how much do we need? So we need to sit down, plan, how much are we going to do to use for the training? Then how much are we going to look, this child who is going to come? How is the infrastructure, how has it been modified to ensure that they have come, they have sat, and the teacher is ready to give them the knowledge that they want. So we are looking at very many things that are going to work together to ensure that inclusiveness takes place.
You know, you spoke of Braille and resources, and that points out to one thing that we all know, that's funding. So in terms of the funding cost of the implementation of this policy, what figures are we looking at, Mr. Negris?
Well, we have already started the process of trying to cost how much it will cost to implement this policy. But of course, even if we had come to a figure, I think we are going to come for it with the figure later on. But I think the figure we may come up will not determine whether it will be successful or not.
Okay.
Because I know, even now, as we are making some progress, the funding is not enough. So, but we have support. The support by parents, the support by other ministries, the support by other organizations is pushing us through. So I think the funding, the cost of funding alone should not determine whether or not we should go into inclusivity. It is actually a right of everybody to be participating in all activities of life in the country. And I wanted to go back about the structures, which can be a challenge to implement of the policy. I think you are right here. I also wanted to point out the fact that inclusive education does not require the support of only teachers. Apart from parents, apart from the teachers, we have other professions that we require to be involved in the process of education of a child. I have experience of other places, and I know we are moving towards there. For instance, in our system now, we are on a TV. We are included by the service of an interpreter.
Correct.
Our viewers can understand this. We need a medical personnel to come in the education system. And we have made recommendations about this, and I think somebody somewhere is looking into it. So if we can have that support combined together, then we have no doubt that we shall at least see what we call inclusive education. By the way, I also want to mention inclusiveness. I think has never been achieved 100% by any country in the world. It is a process, and that's the process we have started.
All right, and like you're saying that the critical supporter in the implementation of this is the change of mindsets. Of the majority of the people. All right, Ms. Ayesiga, you know, I was looking at the statistics of the population of Uganda, and 56% of our population is of children. Now, 8 million of those live in poverty. And you're saying that poverty is a form of exclusion. Their children, their families who don't send their children to school, especially the girl child, because number one, we can't afford to take all the boys and girls in this family to school. So the children, the girls are left out, and that's exclusion. So how will this policy address that, the poverty question? Looking at 8 million children living in poverty, these are children who are at risk of not going through school or accessing quality education because of that factor of exclusion. So how will this address that? And what is the challenge that you foresee in that space?
Poverty is a form of exclusion, and that's why the government of Uganda came up with some strategies, and one strategy is the UPE, Universal Primary Education. Universal meaning everyone is entitled, and universal secondary education. Now, and the main reason why this country and even other countries came up with that strategy is to ensure learners are not left out just because they don't have enough. Can children go to the nearby schools? And if they have gone there, they should not be barred. They should not be stopped from learning just because they don't have a book, just because they don't have the shoes, they don't have a clothes. But if a parent can afford to let this child walk to the nearby school, find a teacher there who is going to create an environment which is friendly and ensure this child learn. And that is one way which is going to really help children access. Can they be, and we are just going to improve on the universal primary and the universal secondary. Learners go within schools that are within their communities, find the teachers there, and as we continue to improve, try to make sure that teachers get the basics so that these children do not go there and they say, oh, I am not well equipped with the methods.
You know, Ms. Ayesiga and Mr. Negris as well. You coming from the Ministry of Education, you know the challenges that we have. The conversation has always been a UPE school in the city, in terms of how it's equipped and, you know, resource-wise, it's not the same way. You can never compare it to a UPE school in a rural area. So that's also a form of exclusion. So what is the ministry looking at, and what is this policy looking at to ensure that all UP schools, all government schools are equipped on the same level? Mr. Negris, I think you can take that one.
I can take it, but I think that's a question for somebody else. And as far as I know, all is being put in place to make that there is equity between a rural school and urban school.
Correct.
Of course, we know the cost of running a school in an urban area is higher than that of a rural area.
Right.
And I think if you look at the grants being offered in the UPE arrangement, there is a difference between what is given to an urban school and a rural school. So that difference is to cover the gap.
Okay, so that is being sorted out.
We are trying to look at that to create balances.
Yeah.
Not that because it is urban, this one is accessing a very, very good education input, and the other one who is in rural is disadvantaged. So the country is coming in. Actually, there are very many things that are coming up which are trying to make sure that there is that spread of equityness, let me say,
yes,
to ensure that learners at their levels, because once we try to only continue look at these ones who are in urban and then forget that even those citizens who are in the rural are very important, and that's why you say every child matters.
Every child matters.
That's why we have a slogan, leave no one behind, and this policy is emphasizing leave no one behind. Therefore, if I am able, that I brought the example of a science policy, whereby when we looked at we said science is our what they are compulsory.
Yes.
Some of the schools performed well just because they have parents who can afford to add on some money to buy. But we are saying even that child, if at all we are saying they're compulsory, then we should provide equitably, have the labs there.
All
have
right.
the,
yeah, okay.
And if they are not there, we must make sure that we try to create an environment, create equityness, whereby even that child who is there should get to learn what this one is learning.
All right, and just to remind our viewers, this conversation has been funded by the Uganda Society of Disabled Children. So, of course, they're in line and in partnership with the Ministry of Education to ensure that this policy is approved and does take off. All right, Mr. Negris, still sticking to that. I know you said that you're not the right person to answer that, but my question to you would be, in the newspapers, in the news, when you look at the, phenomenons in the rural schools, UPE schools, parents are saying that I'm not able to send my child to school because it's not free. It's not completely free. We're saying that it's free education, but it's not free. I'm being asked to buy exercise books, some textbooks here and there, some financial facilitation here and there. I also have to pack food for my child. Sanitary towels has been a big conversation. So is the ministry looking into that in terms of exclusivity on those grounds?
I think, to the best of my knowledge, the ministry has tried its best to ensure that the standard and the provisions to maintain these standards in our schools is uplifted. There are very many programs and projects that have been undertaken by the ministry in the rural schools. You may have heard about the project called UTSTEP. This has done a lot in terms of constructing schools. I think if there are any schools which are under trees, I think they are either not there or they are very few if they are there. There are very many construction. Textbooks have been provided. I think the textbook ratio to the children, in the hands of the children, has greatly improved. The teachers have been undergoing training in the area of numeracy and literacy, and all this the ministry is doing. Of course, there are parents who don't realize that they have a responsibility to take in regard to their children. So they want everything to be provided by government, and that is where we go wrong. Naturally, if you are a parent, there is some provision you have to provide.
Right.
I mean, you give to the child your own blood. So I appeal to such parents that at least most of our parents are able to contribute to what is required in the schools. But because their priorities are different, and some of the priorities which I'm calling are different, are not really good priorities. If they can shift their priorities to their children, I think they will realize a lot more benefits
All right.
than when they put it in those, what I would call, to me, meaningless
Right.
priorities.
Okay.
The benefits will come.
The benefits will come.
Education is the key of success.
Okay.
And if you realize that, then you have to invest in it.
All right. Okay. Ms. Ayesiga, as we come to a close, you know, Uganda has been, people make fun of us or they criticize us positively, saying that if you want to find an African country with the best spectacular policies, go to Uganda. And in the ESC block, they say that the policies are made here, Rwanda implements. Yeah, I'm sure you've interacted with that criticism. Now, in terms of this policy, will it be the same business as usual? We have a policy approved and implementation stands at 0. So in terms of implementation and the big elephant in the room, of course, with the other policies, they always say that they fail to take off because of lack of goodwill, political goodwill. Are you foreseeing such a challenge for this one? And if so, how do you plan to break through that critical challenge to ensure that at least every Ugandan child accesses the benefits of this policy?
Thank you so much. I think it could be a yes or no, because a yes on the grounds that you know, everyone comes up with a policy with a hope, with that dream that is going to be implemented.
Correct.
It's only when it comes to that time of implementation when maybe challenges come in of resources and the rest. But I'm saying this time it may not be the case of where we are going to fail or to not to implement, because this policy is coming on in force when actually the country and especially the sector, as education sector, we are realizing there is a lot of input. And every time we go to assess ourselves, like we recently we have just had a report from Uwezo, which said that we are really still performing poorly in terms of literacy and numeracy.
Yes.
And you'll see when we are below average compared to the other East African countries.
Right.
To mention at least for the East African countries.
Right.
We are still below. So we are saying, can we sit down? And because we have already come in to really ask ourselves, where are we going wrong?
Okay.
If every time donors are putting in a lot of money, we are putting in a lot of effort, why are we still? And now this policy is now actually bring it to limelight that there is a disease of where we are bringing in practices. That's why I said we should have to structure practices.
All right.
Practices that are really making us not perform. We outside here we look like we are really doing a lot.
But
people
on ground, yes.
train,
But on ground it's different.
So many tests, so many
Right.
and the children are being taught content that is not even suitable for their.
Okay.
So we are going to restructure, and this policy is guiding. How much do we need to input on this child who is just arriving?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Ayesiga. Many thanks for coming through. We have to wrap it up at that particular point. At least now we've seen the challenges, and at least we know that it's not just a draft policy that is like any other. You've foreseen the challenges and you have a plan on how to break through those. We wish you nothing but the best. We'll have you back here to have a postmortem, post-approval. And of course, just to remind you, this conversation was brought to you by, of course, the Ministry of Education together with the Uganda Society of Disabled Children. Well, that's it for today's conversation. Many thanks, Mr. Onen Negris, the Commissioner for Special Needs Education and the Ministry of Education. Many thanks, sir, and also Ms. Sarah Ayesiga, the Acting Assistant Commissioner for Inclusive Education and Non-Formal Education from the Ministry of Education. And also this one was special because we're also joined by a sign language interpreter, Mr. Buyinza John. Well, from myself, Malaki Vilodera, Romeo Busiku, and the entire team that makes this possible every single morning, we're saying go ye out and make it work. Many thanks. This is Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
long-lasting, reliable, and certified by Ugandan National Bureau of Standards. Shule Cables, you're assured of safety.
For marble and granite adhesion, Flex Fugafil Waterproof Grout Series for filling between tiles. Find us in all hardwares in Uganda. Afil, feel the strength of quality.
NTV, turning on your world.
This is BBC Money Daily, your bite-sized snapshot of what's hot in business and beyond. Ahead, global warming or global warning. We are live at the UN Climate Change Conference in Madrid. Also, so rich and yet so poor. The World Bank warns that Nigeria could slide into its worst recession. Plus, Ugandan government and Tala Oil reach a deal to end a long-running tax dispute. We are coming to you from Nairobi. Let's do this. My name is Hudayfa Aden. Money Daily starts right about now. What could be eating Nigeria? Well, the World Bank warns that the country will have 25% of the world's destitute people if the economy is not revived soon. The report adds that the oil-rich country will need to pull up its socks and expand its economy by 2.1% in 2020 and 2021. Whereas the bank has highlighted unpredictable economic policies and unstable domestic revenue as Nigeria's biggest problems, the country's land borders remain closed. And here's more, 100 million